All right. Hello, hello. I'm live. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm sorry to be so secretive with these live streams lately. May has been a confusing month. I hope that's getting better now towards the summer and that I'll get a bit more predictable again. I'm here at a little different time every week. This week it's at 15:30. But let's dive into this week's topic. And the topic we'll be looking at today is my learning Norwegian feels like I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall. And, I feel like I have no control over what's sticking and what's not sticking. Sometimes it feels like there is nothing, there is no progression, there is nothing left on the wall, everything has fallen off. Sometimes it feels like, I'm throwing this stuff at the wall and some of it is sticking, but like it's entangled and there's too much of it on top of each other. And I'm like, no, I don't think I can do this. And at the same time, there is no felt result. We want these results, right? I want to learn Norwegian so that I can use it. I want to be efficient with it. I want to speak confidently. I don't want to put that much effort into pushing it out of me. I want to be sure that it's correct and stop being confused. But how do I get there? And when I was inviting to this live stream, I promised that I would tell you what learning Norwegian, dancing, social media presence, and studying medicine all have in common. And I want to start with that because this is so relevant in terms of this problem that very many students are facing. And the problem is climbing over the hurdle in a way, or climbing at the top of the first hill in your learning process, right? And this goes for learning in general. Every time you are entering a new topic, a new sphere, a new kind of something, you are going to experience this probably. Unless you are super talented in terms of this particular thing, then you might not experience it. Or if you have a lot of experience with experiencing it and you have awareness around it, it doesn't have to be painful. You can float through this phase gracefully, and you don't have to panic as a result. But let's have a look at what it is. You might have heard me talk about the OK plateau, right? And the OK plateau is something we talk about in connection with learning languages, learning Norwegian as a second language, as an example. And it's this kind of plateau, right? This kind of plane that happens to you at around B1 level typically. And it happens when you are able to kind of express everything somehow. You're not sure if it's correct, and probably some of it isn't. And you want to express yourself better. You want to grow your vocabulary. You see and feel that you still have room for improvement, and you are learning, but it feels like nothing's happening. You're not moving anywhere, right? So this happens when you're already quite high up. So that's why it's called a plateau. It's elevated. So that means that your level is already something. And as I said, in languages, this typically happens at around B1. But it feels for a very long time like it's not moving anywhere. So this is one thing. But we are not discussing the OK plateau. That's another part of the process. And I'll talk about it again another time. Let us first discuss the first climb before you can even get to any plateau at all, because your progression is not like that. It's not linear, it's ups and downs. It takes more and more time to get to a higher level, the higher the levels get, right? And at the beginning, you have this like nothing, nothing, nothing. I'm studying, I'm learning, and still I have no chance at like really joining the conversation in the kitchen at work. There is like, this is way above my level. I can listen, I can try to calm myself down and I can try to pick up things. And maybe I can throw in some kind of interessant or ser du det, right? If I understand something. But it's not like I can full on join. And this kind of rise, the first ascend, this is the most frustrating things for very many adults. And sometimes it happens even when you are not a beginner. This can happen even when you are trying out a new style of doing things, or you are entering a new topic in that language. We're going to talk about this a bit later, yeah, about these things when it happens. But this initial ascent, and then a bit later the okay plateau at around the intermediate level, this is something that is very universal for learning. So this is not just learning Norwegian as a second language. I promised you to talk to you about the similarity between Norwegian and these other things. And I want to dive into it now because when you look away from Norwegian as such and look at other areas of your life, you can see more clearly what's happening. Yeah. You are very much immersed in the process of learning Norwegian, and it's difficult to look at it from the outside. But when I describe to you these things that you're maybe not doing, or maybe you have experience with something similar and you have gone through the process and emerged on the other side, it will show you very well what's happening in your Norwegian processes, and it can help you big time. All right, so let's have a look at the dancing example first. I love dancing. I've always done some kind of dancing since I was, I think, maybe 13 or something like that. And I've never done anything competitively, but I've become quite good, like above the intermediate level, possibly in some styles. And I used to dance Irish, the Irish style, like Irish dancing, when I was at university. And I danced for a local company, very small company, and it was not the competitive level or anything, but we performed on stages, and it was pretty much watchable. Let's put the level that way, right? And I remember at the beginning when I started with that style, I was like, oh my god, right? I did some courses for the public, I liked it, and then I applied and I got picked into like a preparation section for the dancing company, and I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then I joined the first training, right? And I thought that I knew something about this. I've done these courses for beginners and slightly advanced courses, and I felt like, I was nailing this on the course for the general public. And then suddenly I joined this prep class, and everybody kind of had this understanding of what things are, right? They kind of spoke the language, and they knew that if you enter a sequence, then this would be a typical exit from that, for example. Or if the trainer says do this and that, they're like, oh yes, sure. And nobody has to memorize or remember the sequence, because this is the typical sequence of how things go. And I knew none of that. And I felt like a total dumbass, right? I was standing there and I was like, I think I'm in the wrong class. And I wasn't. It was good. But at the beginning, right, I felt completely desperate. And I feel that this is how my Norwegian students very often feel. They are starting out, or they are starting to learn in a certain way. And they tell me, there is too much. Everybody else seems to be understanding. Everybody else seems to have control over what these things are, and I'm lost. And I always tell them, you know what? You will find yourself in approximately 3 weeks' time. That's usually how long it takes to kind of get through the first shock of like, whoa, this is how it goes. Yeah, maybe you join a Norwegian only class and the teacher refuses to speak English. Yeah, I have some reservations towards that approach, but it's doable to do such a class. you can benefit from it, but you need to adapt, right? So the first adaptation sometimes can take like 2, 3, 4 weeks, but then still you are learning. You are kind of learning to adapt that language in a broad sense, yeah. For example, if the teacher starts speaking about the varpoplastu, yeah, and sometimes you don't know what that means until you know it and you feel it, yeah, and this takes some time. And this also goes for the technical side of the language. You are learning some vocabulary, for example, and you don't know how to put these things together. But when you have learned enough phrases, enough structures, suddenly things start clicking into place. And of course, it depends on the method that you are using for learning vocabulary. If you've been learning isolated vocabulary only for a very long time, then it might take a very long time before it starts clicking. But if you are learning phrases and structures, instead of isolated words, if you have these and memorize these on your vocabulary list or in your application, then it's gonna happen more quickly. That, once you have reached a certain level, you kind of understand the language, meaning the structuring of the whole thing, and it will become easy from there on. And not easy, but much easier, yeah. You will suddenly start feeling the results. And back to dancing from Norwegian. Here in Norway, I haven't really found any Irish dancing company to join, and also it kind of hurts on your feet. So I felt I was a bit too old for that. So recently, I started visiting the local pole dancing studio. They have these fitness classes, and it's like I can use my gymnastics background for that. So I kind of like it. It's a good workout. It's kind of hidden behind the elegant outside that it's a workout, and it's the very same thing, right? I join the open level classes quite often because of my crazy timetable with my kids. It's like the only thing I can make it for. And the instructor is like, do this and that. Do you get it? And all the ladies are like, yeah, I got it, yeah. And I'm like, no, I didn't get anything, because again, this is quite new to me. And I have these movement stereotypes, some of them, in place because I did other sports before or other kinds of dancing. But the particular language of this style is new to me. So when the instructor says, like, go, this, and that, and you take a modification on that one, and the other ladies are like, yep, got it. They don't have to think because they already know in their bones what this is. And I'm like, okay, let me watch this lady who knows what she's doing, and I'll just try to, shadow and do a bit of that, right? That's my strategy if I have to join the high level. And here already, as a piece of advice to you, if you panic and run out of that class before you manage to learn something, or if you lower your expectation that you have to nail the class today, and you're like, okay, this is where I am, everybody else seems to be understanding it, and I'm lost, that means that they have been doing it for a longer time than me, or they have a different background from me. And that's why they understand and they are not lost, and I am completely lost, right? So it's not because I am stupid or because I am unable to learn this. I'm just gonna need time. And if I want to utilize this class well, it means that I have to pick something that I'm gonna work on myself. So very often when the instructor shows the combination, and I'm like, there is no way I can even remember the sequence, let alone perform it. I just watched the very beginning, and I'm like, aha, I understand this entrance because I've done it before. And then there are these two moves after. I think I'm able to remember that. And I just practice that. And then at the end of the class, I'm happy with myself because I learned a new thing, right? And when I do this for long enough, I will realize when I look back that I have suddenly kind of understood, subconsciously picked up a bigger piece of the structuring. And when the instructor next time says, like, you do this, this, and that, I'll be like, oh, I understand the this because I know that entrance and the bit after. The other this, I have no idea what he's talking about, so I'm skipping it, right? And this, that, and that, I actually know what that is. I'm gonna do it, right? And if I manage to do it, then maybe I can try and focus on the middle this, and maybe I can get better in that way. Yeah. And this looks like a counterintuitive strategy. Maybe we should be focusing on these big structures that are overarching and they will explain the whole universe to us. But actually, you always learn anything one little piece at a time. And this applies so much to Norwegian. Yeah. When I talk to my one on one students, or when students in my courses have questions, they very often have this issue going on that they understand the grammar in principle. They understand what this is, but they cannot apply it in some situations, and in others they can. And they seem to be very frustrated with themselves because they feel like, there is this overarching principle and I can't do it, right? But of course you can. You can do it sometimes. You can't do it at other times. But that's because you are learning. And by learning, I mean really learning, not just understanding, but learning to really use it one piece at a time. So, in terms of Norwegian, that means one sentence at a time. Really, that small pieces, one phrase at a time. Because if you have learned a phrase frame, you can use it in other contexts later, yeah? But it starts by actually studying and possibly memorizing that one frame at a time, not understanding the grammar as such, but just taking that piece and be like, all right, this is what I have control over right now. It's not gonna bring a big result tomorrow, but if I do this with this piece and then I work on 10 other pieces, I will see a small result from this. And this, it's going to be a very tangible result, because if I actually learn to say these phrases, these patterns, and I understand how the grammar in them works, but I'm not thinking like, oh, this plus this equals that. No, I just spit out the phrase that I have studied. Yeah. And I have studied it one phrase at a time, focusing small. If I do this, then I will get my snowball rolling in that way. Yeah. And I will get these small results on the way as well, which is very satisfying. But we mustn't miss them. That's another thing, that we are doing that climb and we think, I'll be happy and I'll be done and I'll consider it a result when I can join the conversation in my kitchenette and just like nail it and look like nothing's happening. Yeah. And that's what we want in the end. We want it to be effortless. We want it to look effortless. We want to be nailing it, to be sure that we're speaking correctly, right? We want this. But we mustn't be expecting this on day 2 or in month 2. Yeah. And the fact that some of our classmates maybe look like it's working like that for them, well, it can be that it's working like that for them because they have different aptitudes, they have different experiences, they might have a very different mindset, which is what we're discussing here now, right? But it doesn't mean that it cannot work for you. And I would bet that these students who look like they are nailing it, that they are going a piece at a time as well, right? And they are considering it a result. Yeah. So when you learn a phrase, like for example, today I was working with a one-on-one student, and we were working on the phrase for å. Like when in English, when you want to say that you did something because you wanted a certain result. So you can say things like, I went to the shop to buy some food. Yeah. And then very many students would say in Norwegian, jeg gikk i butikken og kjøpe mat. Yeah. Or they would maybe use til instead of å as well. That's a common mistake too, right? And in Norwegian, this infinitive of purpose thing is called for å. Yeah? Jeg gikk i butikken for å kjøpe mat. So when the second part is answering the question hvorfor, then it's not just å, but it's for å. So that's slightly different from English. It's a bit more complicated. And this is a difficult point for very many people, especially English speakers, obviously. But how we learn this is one sentence at a time, right? So it doesn't particularly help to most people to know that, oh, if I want to express the infinitive of purpose, then I need to use the preposition for. That's like the definition of the whole business. And it helps well if you're a linguist by nature in your heart. So it kind of helps me. Yeah, I hear it and I'm like, yes, I know what that means. It fires my brain cells. But this is my area where my brain cells get naturally fired. For most people, this is not the area, right? Most people aren't born linguists. So if I start to tell you fairy tales about the infinitive of purpose and how to express that function in Norwegian, you'll be like, yeah, okay, I think I get it. But then again, when you speak, you get it wrong, right? Because you kind of mistake the explanation for the learning, for the actual learning. And the actual learning, like I was saying, like I was showing on the example of me trying to do the open class in my pole dance studio and being like, no, 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 and no, I have no idea which direction I should go even, right? And I have to break it into these small pieces and be like, I'll just repeat this little bit. Then you can be like, okay, jeg gikk i butikken for å kjøpe mat. You just learn it. You learn it. You put it on your vocab cards. You put the English translation on the other side. And you're like, okay, when I want to say I went there to do this, this is how I say it. Yeah, you just learn it. And people feel that, how can I ever climb at the top of my first hill in my process when I'm going this slowly in a way, But if you learn, jeg gikk i butikken for å kjøpe mat, and then you learn maybe like, jeg jobber ekstra for å tjene litt ekstra, right? And then you learn another 3. At the end of the day, it will settle, it will sink in, and your subconscious will pick up that, oh, okay, that's the structure. Jeg gjorde det for å something else, yeah? And it will make sense subconsciously, and you will get that, and you'll be able to say it. And that's a win, that's a result, even if we don't want to see such a small thing as a result. It's a result, and it's very tangible. And you do the same with all the other phrases, and you don't care about the fact that this is called grammar in the textbook. At the end of the day, it's a phrase, and you go like that, right? And in this way, you get your snowball rolling again. And you're still pushing the snowball at the top of the first hill, but it'll be rolling from there, right? I promised you more examples to compare with, and the other one I was promising was social media presence. And this is funny because this is quite relatable to many people who maybe work in marketing or who know how these things work. And for me, I am quite active, I would say, on social media. But this is not something I'm naturally good at all, right? I'm good at languages. I understand grammar. I'm good at understanding what people struggle with when they are learning languages. And I know a lot about language learning. But I don't know anything about like marketing, social media things, And when people tell me that, you just post, you do this, and then eventually, and people use the same metaphor, you will get your snowball rolling. And I'm like, yes, but I feel like I'm pushing uphill and there is no result. And again, this is the very same thing, right? I feel like I'm really struggling. I'm really bad at this. I'm posting, but I feel like I'm throwing the same spaghetti on the wall, like you are feeling with your Norwegian. And I'm like, nobody can even hear me, nobody can even see my post, nobody is responding. And when I look at it realistically, it's like none of that is actually true, right? And I can see that the snowball has started rolling already if I kind of lower my expectation of like, okay, I show myself on social media on Monday, and by Friday, I want 10,000 followers. Like, do you see what I mean? If I show it on this example. But very many people are like that with Norwegian. Like I did my beginner course and I'm not fluent. There's something wrong with me. But there is nothing wrong with you. You just have to accept the fact that it happens a concrete bit at a time. Like with me, every time I post something and every time I show up live, I'm like, okay, some people will find me that were supposed to find me. And that's the thing. It happens a little bit at a time. And you're Norwegian too, right? You are pushing uphill at the beginning, but you should also witness it happening, witness these small results, because they will compound. And suddenly you will realize that sometimes you push your snowball and other times it's rolling itself. Yeah, it's the very same thing. And my final example was studying medicine, because it could be studying anything. But I had this particular friend that, oh, she's still my friend. We just don't see each other very often, that studied medicine back in the day. And she's a doctor nowadays, so she did well. And medicine is notorious for being difficult as a field of study. And especially in Czechia, where she studied, it's like they have so much to memorize. It's phenomenal how much these guys have to memorize. It's questionable whether the memorization, like whether there is maybe too much focus on that or not, or whatever. But the fact is that it is so. From all the students, is the medicine students that have to memorize like the most is in my country. And very many students just quit medical studies after year one or whatever. And this friend of mine was telling me, like, the first year, it was terrible. I was just pushing uphill, right? The whole time, just study, 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 memorize, memorize. And I didn't even feel like I knew something. It was like I was doing all this work and delivering in all these exams, and I still felt like I didn't really understand, like how the body worked or why we were learning all that. And it was just hard work, and I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? The result of being competent as a doctor later on. And then she said, like, what happened in year 2 or 3, at the end of year 2, the beginning of year 3, and the more towards the end of the studies in like year 4 and 5, I started enjoying studying, and it all clicked in place and it started to make sense, right? So in medicine studies, it takes a bit longer, possibly, for some people to push at the top of the first hill. In learning Norwegian, it doesn't have to take that long. It doesn't have to take 2 years or whatever to start feeling satisfied. It really depends on what you are considering a result and when you can start enjoying it. And if you do it in a clever way, then after quite a short time of pushing uphill, you can actually start consuming Norwegian sources. If you do it well, they can be quite above your level and you can still benefit. And it can start being enjoyable and satisfactory because you will feel how it's happening even without you. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a bit more after, where you can find more information about that, about these methods. But for the medicine students, they have to push uphill for quite a long time before they have the satisfactory feeling of like, yes, because of all this previous knowledge that I have, it doesn't feel like I'm pushing uphill anymore, right? There is a new topic, there is an exam, I have to push, but it's not like, the snowball also rolls on its own. And in Norwegian, you can get it rolling by itself much, much earlier. So that's the good news. All right. Now let's talk a little bit more about what I call the overwhelm of the beginner, right? And I don't think that this is only relevant for beginners. You can be a beginner in Norwegian, and in that case, it of course applies, but you can be a beginner to a specific method of learning. I, for example, teach students to rely heavily on listening sources, listen in bulk, and I coach students into doing it right so that they don't get frustrated and they can benefit from it. And this is quite new to most people. Most people would be doing the courses, doing the exercises, and then when everything else is done, maybe they will find 15 minutes in the evening once a week to watch something in Norwegian. And this is the other way around. It should be the other way around. You should be watching multiple hours a day if you can make it. And of course, we can't always make this, but the more the better. That's how the learning happens. That's how you get your snowball rolling more quickly if you know what you're doing. Yeah, there are ways of doing this wrong and getting super frustrated as well. But if you do it right, this will help you to learn much more effortlessly and much more efficiently, yeah, in terms of the results. But this is a new method and people struggle with it a little bit. They struggle psychologically in terms of, is this gonna work? Am I wasting my time? They have to wait a little bit. The result is a little bit delayed. So you have to invest maybe 10, 15, 20 hours of watching before you start seeing that it's kicking in place. And people struggle with it, and people aren't used to doing the listening work the right way. So you have to learn it. And after a few months of doing it, it's clear to you what I talk about when I talk about listening, right? But when you first start, you're a bit like, all these other students know what the teacher is talking about, and I feel like I know nothing, right? So you are at the beginning stage of pushing uphill for some time, putting your trust in the process and spending the hours with the listening, even if you can't see the results immediately, or even if you think that they are small at the first, because it's the initial uphill push. Yeah, just like me in my pole dance class, like I'm not new to dancing, and that's my advantage. And maybe you are not new to language learning. Maybe English is not your first language either, but there was something you did and some processes that you went through, and it worked. Eventually, your snowball is rolling. And you're picking up new English words because you consume English sources, you don't even think of it, and it's just, quote unquote, to do the same with Norwegian and to accept that there is this process, not to panic, keep that distance and the open mind and be like, all right, I need an entrance point. I'm gonna pick a little something that I'll be working on and let it be this. It doesn't matter what it is. It's good if it's something strategic, but sometimes strategic is the thing that you like, right? That's strategic because it's easy for you to learn and it's likely that you'll be able to use it because you like it. Yeah. Or maybe you work with a teacher and you tell them, look, I always want to say this thing and I don't know how. And they show you how, they explain to you how it works. And you just start by memorizing a few phrases that have the structure in them. It's as simple as that, yeah. Obviously, it takes a long time altogether, but once your snowball is of a certain size, it gets much easier, right? And it's just like that. You just don't have to panic, or not don't have to. You mustn't panic. Yeah, that's what I mean. Just like me watching the instructor being like, "Do this, 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 and that. Did you get it?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, and no." But that's okay. I'm just gonna focus on this little piece because I know, because I have experience with dancing and doing various activities like that from before. I know that at the beginning there is this desperate stage of like, feels like pushing, 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 and I still don't look elegant. I'm still like looking all around me trying to check what the other people are doing and then just copy them. Cool, it's gonna pass. Yeah, this is a stage, and it's gonna be much more satisfactory after. And for now, I'm finding my satisfaction in nailing the small stuff. Like you in Norwegian, right? You just pick that phrase and you're like, okay, so it's called Jeg prøver å gjøre det. Cool. And if you learn this, then you will never ever again say something like jeg prøver skriver, right? No, jeg prøver å skrive. And you go like, aha, prøver å skrive. Cool. I'm disregarding all the rest today because I'm getting overwhelmed, and overwhelmed is useless, right? I'm just disregarding it and I'm fine with it. I own it because I know this is my entrance point today. This is my addition today. If I nail it, I have learned something and it's gonna add up and my snowball will get rolling. Right? Doesn't make sense? You can drop me a note if you understand what I'm talking about. This is a little abstract until you kind of go through the process a few times with the awareness that this is what's happening, and you get on the other side and like, yeah, and that was a phase and it passed and I'm on the other side now. And when it happens with another thing, right, it's gonna be fine. Like for me, if I was learning a new language now, I don't feel like, kind of, I have to admit, like I don't want to be a polyglot just for the sake of being one. But if I had to or wanted to learn a new language, I know exactly what I would do, and I would push uphill at the beginning as well. My advantage is that I wouldn't have to be pushing uphill for too long because languages are my thing, right? Somebody has to push uphill a bit longer than me. But still, even if I'm good at this, I know exactly what I'm doing. I enjoy languages in themselves, so that's a great advantage. Still, at the beginning, I'm like memorizing, trying to identify things in the sources, pushing. And when I want to speak, like when I want to speak Spanish, right? What do you think happens? I start my sentence in Spanish and I finish it in Norwegian without noticing it. And the Spanish people are like, what the hell, you know? I'm trying to, like buy souvenirs in this way. And I'm like, I'm gonna try in Spanish. And the minute I miss a word, my brain switches and I finish up in Norwegian. And, I'm pushing uphill just like you, but I know that I am, and I know that there is the snowball roll at the other side of that hill, right? All right. So that was what I wanted to talk about. I have one more very important thing, and that is, if you want to get notifications about these live streams and things like that, there is a link in the description to my newsletter that you are very welcome to subscribe to if you want to. And there is also another link to a self-paced course that's called Dare to Speak Out in Norwegian, and that's a course in English. It's a mindset and strategy course, and it's approximately for 6 weeks. I send it spaced out. It starts every Monday now in the summer. So if you want, check it out and you can hop on. And that's a course that's really good if you want to understand how these things work, right? If you want to learn more about the mindsets, how to not panic, how to recognize what's happening, how to think of language learning so that it works for you, and also the strategies, how to learn Norwegian through listening, how to do it, how to pick the listening sources, how to transfer what I'm hearing into speaking, what methods do we have for that, how to implement them. And this is a self-paced course, but it has a possibility to ask me questions. Every Friday I invite for questions through an email. So everybody taking the course that week can ask me about, the previous week or weeks, or about other things that they are wondering about. And I respond through email, or if there are more people asking about the same thing, I might make a little video about it to send out, And at the end of the course, if you finish the whole course, you can also book a half an hour consultation with me. So there's a lot of value for the money. Yeah. So if you want, check it out. The link is always in the description. Now in the summer, there's the newsletter link if you want to join my space in that way and be notified about stuff happening. And there is the Dare to Speak Out in Norwegian course, which is not a Norwegian course, but it's a course about how to learn Norwegian efficiently, how to think about it, how not to panic, and how to benefit the most by using these alternative methods that I teach. All right. So that's it. That's the invitation. And let me know about your questions. I'm very curious about what you're thinking about, about these uphill pushes. And if you have experienced this when learning Norwegian, or if you feel that you might be stuck on that okay plateau that I talked about at the beginning. And you can also share with us if you have experienced this uphill push in another area of your life. Maybe you were learning something else, maybe at your university, maybe this steep learning curve at the beginning of a new job. I should have mentioned that. I didn't, but that's the same, isn't it? You enter a new work position or join a new company, make a sideways move, and you're like, F. Everybody have their, what together, except me. I know nothing. I'm completely lost. But 3 weeks pass and you are rolling. That's the first kind of shock absorption. And then you kind of learn how this is structured, you learn the building blocks, and then you get your snowball rolling as well, right? So let me know about your experiences. I'll be really happy to know, and I think other people will appreciate that as well, because the more examples there are, the easier it is to see that Norwegian is just the same, learning Norwegian is just the same. All right, very pleasant to chat to you today, and I'll see you next week. Until then, bye bye.